come through. I'm really excited. I mean, this is my second stop of excitement next to the Schoenberg, so I'm happy to be here.
Yes. Thank you so much. And it's funny because, of course, I've known about you for a long time, but the first time I met you in person was at the Metropolitan Museum. It was an evening that was organized by the Global Fashion Institute, and that was my first encounter with you. So, what's going on? I mean, I presume that so many people in the audience know you, but it's funny that at long last, also the big institutions are finding out about you and are celebrating you the way you deserve to be celebrated. What do you think it is?
Well, I think it's like social media and has brought a lot of attention to a lot of things that's happening among minorities today, and I'm just fortunate enough to still be around to catch the wave. So a lot of things that I've seen, a lot of influences that I've seen that have come out of my community that wasn't recognized are being recognized now. So I think that has a lot to do with me being here today.
You're being modest, because I don't think it's only about minorities. We can say with certainty that you changed the landscape of fashion across all kind of ethnicities and across all income levels. I mean, truly, the big fashion houses followed what you taught them in the 1980s.
Well,
The knockups. He calls them knockups, not knockoffs.
I did a speaking engagement at Columbia of a professor there he was teaching a class on music, and in that class on music, he was talking about the approach to learning. And he said, generally, when somebody is making a difference in the world, they don't even realize it. And so the same happened to me. I didn't realize exactly what was taking place. The cultural foundation that I came out of made it necessary for me to do something different, for me to be able to create something different, because the outlets that anyone normally would have weren't available to me. So I had to come up with ideas that I felt would be suitable for my community, while at the same time that I could make a profit.
That's quite beautiful what you're saying, that you don't even realize what's going on when you're changing the world. And it makes me want to go back to the way you experience the world. And because you have so many fans here, I would like to jump in your life to the Africa chapter. Even though there's so much to be said about growing up in Harlem, I was very touched by the fact that you won this fellowship with the Urban League. And you had your first summer in Africa when you were how many years old?
Oh, I think I was 20, 21 at the time. I was not happy with the life that I was living in the street, and I was looking for an alternative. And it was the 60s, so in the 60s we had two simultaneous revolutions going on. We had Black Consciousness Movement, and we had the Beatles, and I was fortunate enough to see the message of both. And so I saw that the consciousness, we were saying, I'm black and I'm proud. And so our movement was more concerned with our culture, which led me to Africa, and while at the same time, the metaphysical movement that the Beatles was going through, and I saw the challenge that presented, and I was fortunate enough to be able to grasp both of them. So when I went to Africa and lived in Africa for a while, and when I came back, I felt like I was ready for a new experience. I was ready to incorporate these two influences that I had into my community and into what I was doing.
So you were there first for, and by the way, I think that the slides are not rolling, and not that there's anything wrong with Jay-Z, but I want salt and pepper here. So let's make them go. If you don't mind, we can have them, we can have the PowerPoint run. But so it's, you went the first time for that summer, and your fans want you to turn so they can take pictures. You went for the first summer with the Urban League, and then you went back for the Rumble in the Jungle, and that's where you stayed there for a longer time? Where were you based?
Yeah, well, when I found out that you can get on an airplane and within the span of 45 days and get back on and don't have to pay. So I got on the airplane. Every place it stopped, I got off. And I stayed there for a while. And while I was in Liberia, Monrovia, Liberia, there was I went to the African market. And, you know, I always liked to dress, so I had nice clothes on. And the guy in the African market asked me, he said, I told him I like that painting. And he said, I like what you're wearing. I said, you want to trade? He said, yeah. So I ran up into the hotel and brought all my luggage and everything back and traded all my luggage for African artifacts. And while I was there, I had an African tailor. He was from Guinea, but he was living in Liberia. And I had him make all my clothes. So the impact this had later on was the influence that I had with the African tailors made me think when I opened up my store and the major brands wouldn't sell to me. So I got very upset. I said, I have to think of something. So one day I was downtown and I saw the Africans with their trinkets on the street. And I said, I gave them a card. I said, if you know any Africans that sew, I said, tell them to come to the store.
Senegalese in particular, right?
Yeah, they were. It just so happened it was the Senegalese. It's not that I was seeking out Senegalese, but it so happened it was the Senegalese. And so one tailor led to two tailors, led to three tailors, and they didn't really know how to work with leather. I had a concept of what I wanted to do with leather. And once I showed the first one, and then he showed the second one, and after a while I had 12 working in it. I was open 24 hours a day for 365 days a year. So I had 12 working sewing in the daytime, 2 shifts, and 11 at night. And so we never closed. And it had got so till I had to build an apartment in the back of the store so I could stay there and sleep. But
yeah, there was a time when stores, I mean for a long time, since the 70s or even earlier, stores used to be places to hang out for subcultures, overcultures all over the world. I mean, I think in London and also Milan when I was growing up. But it seems like really people looked to your boutique as a place where they could come and check on your work, but also hang out.
well, you know, the funny thing is I just told a friend of mine today, you got to understand the background that I come from. I mean, I made a big transition in my life. But when people saw me on the front page of a section of the New York Times, they said, hold up, Dapper Dan is on the front page of the New York Times and he doesn't have on handcuffs? So that gives you an idea of the background that I came from. It was more credible for them to see me being, you know, in a lineup than on the front page of a section of the New York Times. But the transition that I made was my experience in Africa and my experience with reading in itself made a difference. I think it was my father, because my father left the South at 12 years old, and I could not figure, and he never went back. He never saw his family again, and he only went to the 3rd grade and he had to teach himself to read. So I said, Daddy, I said, I don't get it. How do you get that? He just said, my brother was too good to me, so I had to leave. So what happened with me was that I remember being in the 8th grade, and all the clothes that I had were used clothes, hand-me-down from Goodwill. I never had clothes from a new store, so it was Ripley's department store. I'll never forget that. And my father was taking me to get my first suit that was going to be bought out of a regular clothing store, not out of like Goodwill's or, you know, a store of that nature. And so I saw the suit, I picked it out, and they presented him with the contract. And I read the contract. And I was in 8th grade, and I had just learned out how to calculate, you know, how you figure times with 8 times whatever the garment costs. And I said, Daddy, this is too much. We're going to end up paying 3 times what this suit is worth. My father looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, boy, don't you know you could read? He said, you could read, boy. And I didn't really understand. I really didn't get the impact. He said, boy, you can read. You know, my father had tears in his eyes because this is something that he never had the opportunity to do. And that's set down in my mind. So when I was going through this transition, I said, you know what, man? I'm leaving the streets. And the way I was able to leave the streets was to read my way out of it. You know, I think one of the major books that I read, I went to, there was a store in Harlem called the Tree of Life bookstore. And I went to the Tree of Life bookstore and I was looking for it was the book, I'm trying to think the exact name. It was Tree of Life bookstore, and it was a vegetarian book or something that the members of my family used to read. And this guy, and they didn't have the copy I was reading. And a guy presented me, he said, here, read this, brother, I'm sure you enjoy it. And the title of the book was Man's High Consciousness by Professor Hilton Holtzman. And when I read that book, it just changed my whole life. You know, and so from there, I read everything by Hilton Holtzman. I got into metaphysics, and now I had to incorporate everything I was learning because I had experience with the Nation of Islam, experience with the Panther Party. You know, I had experience with all the major hustlers in Harlem. So to answer the question, where my store is such a community place is because I identified with everybody in the community.
And because, you know, a really great article in the New Yorker that I read just a little time ago by Khalifa Saneh that was in 2013 said that you were able to transform your social abilities into a viable business, because truly what you've always been is a very communicative person. And also fashion and style are for you a form of communication in a way, wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, yeah, I think I was able to make the transformation by the transformation that was already in me as a result of what I was doing. But it wasn't easy because it was two forces at work, you know? I mean, what I'm doing today and my action today has a lot to do with the social conditions that take place in Harlem and every place else. There's a dark side of the culture that a lot of people, you know, you hear a lot of the young rappers, a lot of guys talk about, you know, for the culture, but there's two sides of the culture, you know, and my intention is to, since I live so much with the dark side, is to change the dark side. I mean, I was so embedded in the dark side of the culture. Is Danny Jr. here? Yeah,
so Danny Jr. is one of the two sons that have been...
I mean, I was so embedded in the dark side of the culture is that in the beginning, like I was raising my first son like that, and I remember being on 131st Street in Links Avenue, and a guy was getting killed. And my son said, come on, Dad, come on, Dad, come on, Dad. And I said, no, you stay there and watch this. And so that shows you where my mindset was at and what I experienced on the dark side of the culture. So I said, if I can use fashion and people can see me, and I can introduce to them that somebody who comes from thug life can make this transition, you know? And the first thing they would ask themselves was, how did he make this transition? And they said, well, he read his way out of it, you know? Because like in Harlem, I mean, if Malcolm said it once, and he said, man, like, you had the slave Negro and the house Negro, and when the master's house was on fire, the field Negro would hope for a wind, and the house Negro would try to put out the fire. You know, so I'm part of the field Negro, because like what we used to look forward to, when I was growing up, we was like, oh man, it's going to be a blackout. We pray for a blackout. We pray for a riot. So, you know, I had to read my way out of that, you know. You see how, you know, to me, the young people say, well, you always see them in suit and ties and stuff like that. But I got excited neighborhood kids, so they identified with me. And if they can see me doing something different, it makes a big difference, you know?
So the store went from 1982 to about 1992. What happened between then and now?
Oh, okay, I'll give you a little short.
Yeah.
My memoirs is coming. Okay.
It's coming out in September, right? In September.
Okay, so you know that all the gangsters in in the United States, when all the major cities, all the gangsters used to come to the store, right? So when they shut me down, and, major brand shut me down, I said, you know what? I'm gonna take the store to them. And so I hit the road. I used to get in the car, load up, and drive from here, hitting all the major black cities from here to Chicago. And then I come back and hit all the major black cities from here to Atlanta. Because I knew all the kingpins of the, in the different cities, So it wasn't no introduction wasn't necessary. So that's for doing the my underground years. That's pretty much what I did. In addition to I was the best kept secret. One thing about the rappers, they really believe in don't snitch. So, so they want Jay-Z and Fat Joe. So the lyrics, so the lyrics was, you see somebody dressed like the clothes that he describes in his neighborhood, he would be apprehensive. But if he sees somebody when coming through his neighborhood with a shirt and tie, he would be less apprehensive. Like, for instance, in my neighborhood now in Hollywood, if I come on my brownstone stoop and the white people in our neighborhood walk by and I just like got regular clothes on, when they get to me, they make a circle. And then they continue. When I come down in shirt and tie, it's all together different approaches. Now, it's not about, we should accept people, but we need an identity. We know a lion by its roar. Everything has an identity. So when you see certain identities that are typical of a certain behavior, you get apprehensive. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm saying that's what's happening. But here's an interesting thing, and I tell this to the kids in my neighborhood. I say, you hear a lot of rhetoric about, a lot of gangster rhetoric, and I say, but if the beef get really bad, they go back to their mansions. You're going to say the stuff they say, and you got to come back out the projects. You can't run in no mansion. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it has a lot to do with.
So once again, a form of communication of dignity, stability, and safety. Okay.
My heroes wear ties.
Your heroes wear ties. Great. Tell us more about who your heroes are.
My father. I bought him his first tie though. His first outfit. My father wore his work clothes up until the time I started making money. And I asked him, I said, Daddy, I said, what you want? I said, what you want? He said, I like the way you dress. So I bought him outfits to match mine. And that was one of the biggest thrills of my life, to have me and my father.
And family is really important because his sons, Jelani and Danny Jr. are really, I was saying, his guardian angels. And actually, Danny Jr.'s 2 jackets are upstairs in the exhibition, and Jelani is managing you. But so family is still your center of gravity.
Yeah, and I try to understand. I try to be reserved about it because my sons are to prep schools and everything like that. Yeah, so they're different from the way I grew up.